I can name names. I can definitely name names.
International Cricket Council writing the strategy for world cricket. Just to diffuse the whole damn thing, take a breath and then move forward.
I mean, whiskey is whiskey and very risky.
It's an evolution again. Pushing borders in mouth.
It was still very lonely at the end of the day.
I think it's important that we all talk about it. We have what you call a T-shaped skill set. We went in with a multi-pronged negotiation strategy with these guys. I love my repertoire of clients: food, booze, and beauty.
Ja Rajesh, ji le apni zindagi. But my point is,
Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of IIM Bad. We are again here, mixed wigs and chow, as usual, but we've got another special guest with us in this episode, and his name is Subbu or Rajesh Subramanian. Subbu, as many of you know, and some of you don't, Subbu was our classmate at IIM Bangalore, and more than just being a classmate, he was my next door neighbor in the second year. So he wasn't invited initially to come, but then we got the hint from another episode which you've seen, episode 9, Ashish Gokhale, who mentioned a lot about Rajesh Subramanian, and we preferred before we air that episode to hear Rajesh's side and Subbu's side of the story. So we will go down that path in bits and pieces. But first, Subbu, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us. Can I ask you, where have you been in the last 24 years since IIM Bangalore? 2000, you graduated. Just give us a brief snapshot on where you've been with cities, countries, careers, companies, and on the family front.
Sure thing, yeah. Look, it's a pleasure to be here, and I must admit I have no idea what Ashish said. I haven't spoken to him in weeks now, so I'm quite curious to find out whether our versions match. You keep us honest. Hey, look, great to be here. Like I said, right, it's always fun to meet some old pals and banter. Miggy, you and I have been along through the journey for the last 24 years, but Vix and Chow, pleasure to be here. What have I been doing since 2000? Little bit of a backtrack, right? Why did I go into IIM? I went to an IIM after my engineering. I went to VJTI in Bombay because I did not want to go abroad and do my MS. It's a very weird answer, but for a 20-year-old me or a 19-year-old me, that was the logic. MS नहीं करना है चल IIM try करते हैं तो IIM Bangalore पहुंच गया. I got into consulting for my summer internship. Then I got a consulting job at the end of it, which brought me to Singapore. Again, completely against the plan. My plan was to go back to Bombay, work, be part of the family and so on. But suddenly that Singapore thing happened, and on a like next day the offer was here, so I moved. And Singapore was the start. I joined Deloitte Consulting, and for the first 6-7 years, I was building on my engineering background in a way, doing that whole curious engineer tinkerer type of roles: operations, supply chain, consulting, business process re-engineering. Worked on the shop floor with a lot of savviness to what I had learned and worked before as an engineer as well. Built in the whole project management, the usual consulting gig, right, as you grow. And during those days, big four consultings used to do systems integration and everything else. I was part of that everything else. I followed my boss from Deloitte to Bearing Point, and within Bearing Point was formerly KPMG Consulting. Back in 2006 is when Bearing Point was also expanding their UK operations. And Neha, my wife, and I met Neha, by the way, in Singapore. She's an architect. She was studying there. She was working there. We decided, okay, let's get out, go to a place which has 4 seasons. I mean, today it's nice. It's sunny, actually. Miggy, you've seen it. UK is hardly 4 seasons, but hey, you can still pretend it is, right? So anyway, we moved to the UK. 2 reasons. One, because weather was good. 3 reasons, actually. Two, English, right? Anywhere else in Europe couldn't have had that. And we didn't want to move to the US because of the third reason, which is one direct flight away back to our parents and family and other things should anything happen and so on. So that's what landed me here. That's when the second stage of my career and my personal life also happened, right? Zoya, my daughter, was born in 2009, our daughter. And I also moved jobs to AT Carney. And I spent nearly a decade with Carney in a bit of, again, senior consulting, leadership, advisory, CXO advisory sort of a thing, in again the areas of procurement, supply chain management, with impetus on sales and marketing, because I used to do a lot of that stuff as well over there. Few things happened, worked across the board, based again out of London, but spent a year in Russia, spent a lot of time in continental Europe, did a bit of global programs as well with some great companies, right? Largely consumer goods clients. I love my repertoire of clients: food, booze, and beauty. So you're always, all your senses are in a way taken care of, right? So that sort of a thing. It was really a good set of clients, great set of work. I did some fantastic projects outside of it as well, like Miggy, you know that International Cricket Council, writing the strategy for World Cricket 2011 to 2016. One of the coolest things that I've ever done. Anyway, a few things led to the other, and at some point in time, 2018 is when Genpact happened. As you know, some of our classmates are in Genpact. Some of them for a long time. Always been in touch about what's happening, what's not. So I moved to Genpact to kind of take into the next stage of my leadership journey. Again, services, consulting, and so on, going into the whole ambition that services firm have to converge what they offer clients. So again, within Genpact, adventure, a lot of adventures. 2 years in Europe on a roll, then 2 years in Japan when that was identified as a growth market for us, and they needed a lady to move there. So I ended up doing that, lock, stock, barrel, and family, and back here now over the last couple of years. So during this process, 2015 was when my son Vyom was born. So right now I have two kids: Zoya, who's 14, 14 and a half, nearly 15. She goes to boarding school. She's in year 10. And Vyom, who's 8, and he's full of life. He goes to, in fact, the same school that Manisha's son goes as well. And he's full of life, where we bond across so many different aspects of things: sport, food, this, that, and the other. So that's where I am. I've live in Northwood, Northwest London, not very far from our friend here. Still very much part of London, and but very much in the countryside, which is what really love about it. When the sun's out and the breeze is blowing, it's just beautiful out here.
Yeah,
That's where I am,
on
guys.
the 5 days the sun is out, Subbu. On the 5 days the sun is out, including today.
Those
Same
So
thing.
one quick thing I picked up on your first part of the journey when you said you joined IIMB because you didn't want to do an MS, and I would say it's not a weird reason because that's exactly the reason why I joined IIMB, why I did MBA. So after my engineering, I had an option either to do a PhD. I had a scholarship option at a couple of universities in the US. But doing my master's thesis, I was clear that no, I don't want to do research.
there
One
you
year
go.
of master's thesis
I'll tell
was
you that's exactly the reason I also went to IIM, just because I didn't want to go abroad. It's another matter. No one was giving me anything abroad, but that's fine. I also didn't want to. So tell me, how did you? You said you didn't want to go abroad, and so why IIM? Why not something else? Why not a master's in your engineering? And you were already working. Is that right?
I was working with Larsen and Toubro, L&T.
Okay.
Spent a bit of time, and again had a good time over there. But for some reason, I got influenced during that time by a lot of management thinking, this, that, and the other, right? Again, B schools, to cut to the chase, also gave you much better opportunities on the career front, jobs, this, that, and the other. So then I figured, what is it that I can do? One thing I knew I was good at that point in time was preparing for exams, doing well in exams, going through for whatever reason, right? It kind of led my life doing that. So I said, okay, CAT seems doable with the right preparation. So let's do it. And yeah, it led to the yeah. That's where IIM Bangalore happened. To be very honest, didn't overthink it. To be honest, I thought of all the options available in India, this is probably one of the best. So went for it.
Don't you think you missed the boat? Infrastructure in India since 2000 to 2024, and L&T, if I remember right, so L&T share price at that time used to be about 16 or 18 rupees, and right now it's about nearly 4,000 or 3,800 or something like that. I mean,
Well,
that just it's and share
it's
price
funny
is
you
just
mentioned
a
that.
reflection of how that company has grown and how the business would have grown.
Look, at the end of the day, I mean, my career journey, also the choices that I've made have always been the life side of it as opposed to the work side of it. Do I regret? Maybe. I think about it. Sure, what would have happened if the sliding doors moment had led somewhere else? But to be honest, I have no regrets. The choice that I took was great, and it worked out nicely. Because I went to Singapore, I met Neha. I couldn't have done that, right? And so on and so forth. So I can't do anymore. By the way, on L&T thing, it's funny you mentioned that I recently went and rejuvenated my ICICI direct account, which I, for some reason, I just didn't use that for trading. I actually discovered I had some shares of L&T for the last 15 years sitting there. Thankfully, they didn't kill it or anything. So it gives me a little bit of change next time I get into India.
The reason I chose IIM was because मुझे US नहीं जाना था. In a way, and मुझे और कुछ करना था, right? So I thought bringing in everything is a great idea into an MBA. Basically, okay. But then वो अगर जब वो decision ठान लिया तो I had to work towards it because I've always kind of taken a goal-oriented approach.
I'm going to
at
ask
least
you a
through my
question there.
academic career. हाँ बोल.
I'm going to ask you a question there, which is, are you going to still not name names, or are you going to
About?
name names?
I can name names. I can definitely name names. So look, I look through my IIM journey, especially during the IIM, a bunch of people have made a massive impression. I'm happy to talk about them. And yeah, no, look, you know that there are a bunch of us from Bombay who kind of came into it together, right?
अबे बॉम्बे नहीं है, मुंबई है.
नहीं बॉम्बे ही है बॉस. मुंबई मतलब
अबे
किसी
यार,
ने
मुंबई है,
मैं तो
मुंबई,
बॉम्बे में
मुंबई,
पला हूँ,
मुंबई.
बॉम्बे में पढ़ा. हाँ, बॉम्बे में पैदा हुआ हूँ, टेक्निकली मैड्रास नॉट चेन्नई. और मैं बॉम्बे में पढ़ा और फिर मैं बैंगलोर गया. ठीक है, बंगलुरु शंगलुरु नहीं गया, मैं बैंगलोर से मेरा ये है. तो मेरा स्कूल सर्टिफिकेट में ठीक है, चलो कॉलेज सर्टिफिकेट में मुंबई है, बट फिर भी बॉम्बे इज बॉम्बे. Obviously, like the person I was closest to was Gokhale, Ashish. We kind of knew each other from Kelkar, from our 11th, 12th.
Who's
But through
Kelkar?
engineering as well. He was
Who's Kelkar? Who's Kelkar?
Kelkar is the name of our junior college, yeah, 11th, 12th wala.
अच्छा,
Bombay
okay.
में junior. So then engineering करना था उसको, मेरे को वो गया सरदार पटेल, मैं गया VGT. लेकिन हम लोग we were always in touch. We used to take train rides together and all that. एंड में हमने सोचा चल करते हैं, और नौकरी भी दोनों को एक कंपनी में लगी. ड्यूरिंग दोस डेज मैकीज के लिए इट वाज अ ग्रेट जॉब. तो अंदर गए. सो उस और 14 साल में वी ट्राइड फॉर कैट, राइट? आई ट्राइड फॉर कैट. I got a couple of calls but didn't convert because I was because of various reasons, but one most important reason is I was a complete fattu. I couldn't speak out loud. I was a very introverted, shy character. I couldn't hold my own GDs and other things, and I bottled a bunch of things up. And I have no shame to admit that. In fact, that happened through my engineering days, potentially through my
I'll
days.
come to Fattu in a bit. I'll come to Fattu in a bit. But तो you and Ashish Gokhale, तुम्हारा प्यार कब से था?
Look, we are like, yeah, we've known each other forever, man. We're like, you know, close in a way.
केजी से शादी करने के प्लान्स बनाए थे. केजी से शादी करने के प्लान्स बनाए थे.
कहाँ से आ गया ये तो है, वीजा कुछ भी घुसा देगा क्या? No, but look, I'm telling you, no, I don't know what Gokhale remembers from those days, but we were like on it, right? So anyway, after the first year, when we went to L&T, by the way, Gokhale was very focused. And Gokhale also, right? When he gets a chance, he wants to make the most out of it. So he was the only guy who chose L&T में ऐसा था that you could choose manufacturing, so shop floor, you could choose marketing, you could choose sales, and I think there was a fourth function, I can't remember. So I knew that मुझे time pass करना है, मुझे time चाहिए, CAT के लिए prep करना है, तो मैंने ऐसे marketing choose कर लिया. और हमारे एक दो दोस्त थे जो प्रोडक्शन गए. Gokhale was like, नहीं, मैं आया हूँ तो कुछ सीख कर जाऊंगा. So he did this rota where every 4 months you would move around from function to function, which meant that he actually had to do work. ठीक है? So Ashish actually did work during that time. But
So
look,
I need to understand this well. From what I gained from Ashish Gokhale is that you inspired him because you were the focused guy. He was the guy who was not interested, and you inspired him. And you're saying the absolute reverse. So क्या था?
Look, maybe from an MBA perspective or to getting into CAT, preparing, yes, potentially, because I went a bit stir crazy. I used to do yoga. I used to sign up for 7 a.m. yoga lessons at L&T. I actually prepared for CAT by waking up every day, literally every day at 2 or 3 in the morning, doing a full paper from 3 to 5 or 3:30 to 5:30, then going into work, having a good day at work, coming back.
I think you have to have inspired him because he said he only woke up at 5 a.m.
Who?
Ashish Gokhale said that he woke up at 5 a.m. inspired by you, and you're saying that you woke up at 2:33 a.m.
I woke up much earlier, so that's why that story must would have definitely inspired him.
So,
वो बोला कि यार ये राजेश इतना fight मार रहा है, चल मैं भी fight मारता हूँ. And Gokhale, you know, right? You know, sometimes he also is like gets inspired by the randomest of things when he sees somebody else do it. But look, and you know how he's evolved, right? He's a super inspirational guy. With now that he runs marathons, he goes ocean diving and swimming, and God knows what else, boss. But look, we had a very good shared journey between a few of us, and once we got through CAT, right? Once we got through Bangalore and Calcutta, the decision between for us was कहीं साथ में जाना है. Like तो हमने पूरा मतलब pros and cons का list बनाया. अभी मुझे याद है बैंगलोर, कलकत्ता, डिसिप्लिन, अहमदाबाद तो anyway हुआ नहीं, but फिर भी डिसिप्लिन बहुत ज्यादा था जो भी था, right? तो वो छोड़ दिया. But Bangalore, Calcutta में we weighed the pros and cons, and there are a lot of those things. But ultimately we chose Bangalore because साथ पास था, cooler city था. The city was relatively close to
same
campus.
distance है. Don't tell me that Calcutta was further away than Bangalore from Mumbai. Same distance.
Of course it was. Calcutta was train wise. Bangalore was 18 hours. And look, and I'll be honest with you, I only used to take.
debate नहीं करना है.
नहीं 18 घंटा बैंगलोर था, कलकत्ता 36 घंटा था. तो सोच एक हफ्ते की छुट्टी में तुम 3 दिन ट्रैवल करोगे, 4 दिन घर पे रहोगे. What's the point, right? And still Calcutta was like much bigger batch, and of course there were a whole lot of other reasons. Bangalore is a cooler place.
Is that how you explain to your parents? Because
course.
I had a whole reason how I explained to my parents.
कि क्या बोला तू? मेरी गर्लफ्रेंड बैंगलोर में है. नहीं, तेरी गर्लफ्रेंड
नहीं, let's keep that away, right?
But फिर भी ऐसे कुछ बोला क्या तूने? Let's keep that aside.
Bangalore had better weather. Ahmedabad was in Gujarat. My internal reason was Bangalore was the pub capital and Ahmedabad was prohibition.
नहीं, look, मेरा ये भी था. Bangalore is close to Madras, where I mean we have a family home and all of that, right? Appa was still in Bombay before Madras, Mailapur. And my grandparents at that time also, my dad, they were teaching voluntarily in a school in Puttaparthi, which is very close to Bangalore. So then there are a bunch of those reasons that came up.
But the one thing you would never have got from L&T is all these samples you've got from your clients. Is that right? Are these samples from every client that you're collecting behind you?
Oh no,
All
not
your
really.
booth clients?
Not anymore though. But yeah, you're right. Not just samples from clients, right? Sometimes you have some great experiences when you visit a place. Then you become an advocate of that particular brand, like Lafroig. If you guys know the brand, right? Of course you do. If you're whiskey drinkers. When Zoya was 3 months old, Neha planned this trip, driving trip up to Scotland. And because Zoya was a baby in arms, she wasn't allowed to any of the distilleries. And because it was my birthday trip around then, we had to go. Lafroig markets very well. When I first had my whiskey when I was in Singapore, they create a dream. You come to Lafroig, we'll give you a V dram, we'll give you boots, and we'll give you your country's flag to place on your own personal square foot of land with a certificate. So that already wanted you to go. Then when you go there, they say, hey, you come all this way, and your daughter, yeah, she seems peaceful. Why don't we put someone to mind her, babysit her? You guys go have fun. That's it, right? That one single experience is enough to make you an advocate. So I always end up having a bottle of Lafroig on my shelf. So yeah, that's how I go
So,
about collecting various
Lafroig,
things, I guess.
I think for many of us, I mean, I'm slightly more educated after our trip last year, but for many of us, the different types of scotch, that's always been a mystery. I mean, whiskey is whiskey and very risky, but can you tell us what are the different types of scotch in Scotland?
Well, look, it all comes from the firstly, Scotch is Scotch because it's from Scotland, right? Just like Champagne is Champagne because it's from Champagne. Just cross the valley, you'll get the same grape, similar grape, better quality. You can't call it Champagne. So, look, you have a few Scottish regions, right? The Isla region is where the island is where Lafroig and Bowmore and a bunch of others are from. Very peaty and very smoky in terms of the taste and palate. Then you, of course, have the highlands and you have the Speyside, the valleys, highlands with all the highlands in the main part of the island of the UK of Scotland, and you have the Speyside along the valleys of the River Spey. So they are a lot more mellow and a lot more complex also in terms of how they go. And of course, you would know that when you cross the border across to Ireland, you start adding a E into the whiskey. The Irish whiskey ends
Yes.
up having
Yes.
E, and you go further to the west to the US, it's all with whiskeys and bourbons and so on. But
That's
look,
because
whiskeys are,
The Irish settlers in New York, and they
yeah,
took the E with them also.
they took the E with them as well. But if you
Yeah.
try go around the world and go into Japan, Japan
Mm.
2 years were a revelation. Do you know that about 90, I'm maybe exaggerating it a bit, but it's high 90s, 95 to 97% of, or 99% of Japanese whiskey brands you don't get outside Japan. You only get the Suntory stable, you only get the LVMH, the Beam, and those ones, Nika and whatnot, right? But you don't get a lot of it outside. And to me, I think that's where global travel has helped me a lot to discover a lot of new things as we go around.
So any
Got
specific
it.
reason why it's not available? Is it something which
It's
has not
just
become popular, or what?
small batch, made largely for local consumption, made largely local connoisseurs and so on. And you'll probably just start discovering a lot of that in India now, right? Like I last time I picked up a couple of bottles. There's one called Indri somewhere there, which apparently won some awards. Then of course Paul John, and this that. You'll find that over the next couple of decades, you'll find a lot of local Indian single malt whiskies, premium price.
Yeah,
You
Indian
don't
single malts
necessarily
are
need the
doing
stores.
really well. Some of the new ones, but yes,
So now, which
the
are the
only
big
Japanese
companies
thing.
now? Which are the big companies? I mean, my information is so dated because it's from the UB and Shaw Wallaces of the world, and
No,
Khetan,
so
but they are all the
you have
200
brands
rupees
like
whiskey bottles.
Indri, you have brands like Amrut, which are getting awards globally, competing with the best. So
Unlike Indian whiskey, which technically isn't whiskey by the British or Scottish definition, uh, whiskey is a long lead time product, and especially the more expensive ones. So even if you know that, अरे यार मेरा brand चल गया and market demand है, you can't up your production and provide it to the market next year.
scale it up.
Right? It'll take 10 years or 12 years unless you've got some very smart people. They buy those different types of scotch from, and then just all they do is they mix it up in their own particular recipe. So that you can
And
probably get, but if you're doing your own fermentation, distillation, and whatnot, then it'll just take time.
Yeah, I
and you
mean,
know in
lot of brands are blended that we get here, but yes, some
yeah.
of the single malts are, yeah, are starting to do very well.
And it's a
Yeah, so we are
recipe,
saying.
right? You go by gut feel, you go by a little bit of science, you go by again a story. In Japan, again, there were a lot of bars where they would they would get uh, big kegs of whiskeys from Scotland, then blend it and then age it in another barrel, maybe for 1 year maximum. But then they would bottle it and sell it as their own thing. Great tasting ones, right? And but there's a great story about it. The blender would say, "Yeah, when I went on a hiking trip to Scotland, I did this." There's always stories always sell, and that's been my
Hmm.
realization over the last 2.5 decades as well.
How was your experience in Russia, Subbu?
This was a long time ago, yeah. This was 2007 and 8, nearly 12 months. So I worked with a client, a Norwegian client, who bought a set of chocolate confectionery and biscuit making manufacturing operations across Russia, uh, 3 or 4 locations: Ekaterinburg, Ulyanovsk, birthplace of Lenin, and of Saint Petersburg. So I spent the summers as well as deep winters there, right from 30, 40 degrees, 24-hour days nearly to 22-hour nights and minus 40 degrees Celsius with wind chill. So quite a lot of extreme in terms of how it worked. Russia was also at that point in time again fairly mineral rich. It's still mineral rich. Right? So the rich were rich, the people who were not were not. So it was a very interesting place. It was very interesting on a lot of accounts as well. People were nice, but as a place, people were fairly warm. As a country, it was great. Locales and architecture. St. Petersburg is the grandest, one of the grandest cities, if not the grandest city I've been to. And what differentiates it from a lot of the old historic cities in Europe and others is the use of colors everywhere. Right, you'll have pastel colored buildings, the grand buildings, and so on. You'll have some great stuff. The combination of modernity as well as tradition, in a way like Tokyo. Although Tokyo can become also quite concrete and quite bland to some extent, if you think about it. But yeah, Russia, all in all, my experiences were great. And look, for me also, working in chocolate factories day in and day out, turning around operations, it was something I had the engineer in me and the chocolate lover in me always loved, right? Um, so, in fact, I was told when I started that type of work. So, we would go and use Lean Six Sigma techniques to turn around a particular set of operations. I was told when you know exactly what's going on down there, you'll start eating the product that's being manufactured. And that was what I was dreading the most. Thankfully, it did not happen. So, I still have a weakness for chocolate and other things. Though
Well, when they say what's going on down there, what's going on down there, like what is the dirty secret of chocolate making?
not I'm not saying dirty secret. It's just that when you go deep into it and you see that entire process from when it starts, the byproducts, the oil going in, this, that, and the other, you kind of don't think so much, right? Because when you like, we've grown up, most of us have grown up knowing about big chocolate branding, Cadbury Dairy Milk, कुछ खास है हम सभी में going and hearing about that, and then that whole aura comes in, and you look forward to tearing off that wrapper and taking a bite and just enjoying it and moving on. You don't really think about the 100 steps that happens before. I'm not saying there's anything dirty going on, but it's just that it's too
No, it
raw
just
and too in your face, so that you, yeah.
so
Sorry,
is
Maggie, go on.
does that
That
mean
reminds
that
me,
you
Subbu.
that's the first time you discover that dairy milk doesn't have any milk but mainly refined oil with emulsifiers?
I
Is that
disagree actually. Dairy milk has
no?
milk.
But
They
two
still
drops of
look
milk?
dairy milk. Dairy milk has, look, they say, I think, I don't know how much of it, but a glass and a half full of milk. They still have that logo, right, of milk being poured. And dairy milk, in fact, you should, you guys, since this is a podcast, I was listening to an amazing podcast the other day on Restor's history. Manish, you probably know it. And they were talking about the
Hmm.
history of chocolate and how it came about, right? And they talk about Cadbury. Cadbury, and in fact, some of the Quakers were managing the whole making chocolate. Of course, came in as a drinking chocolate, right? You had the powder, you added it, and you drank it. But they made it into a bar, and that's where this thing was born. It does have milk, by the way. So
That bar, how did that come about? I've never heard the history of chocolate on that count. I mean, was it like an accident, like so many of the best inventions have been an accident, or did someone actually
I
go
need
out to make a bar?
I need to remember. I think there was they were processing something, and there was some kind of accident that happened, which made it more emulsified and so on.
Hmm.
They basically there was a lot of the Dutch, I think the Van Houtens or someone, they were doing a lot of scientific progress in chocolate making, the pressing machines and so on. They figured out how to get cocoa butter out, they figured how to roast the nibs, and so there's a lot of that coming in, and it just so happened that they realized having it in a solid form could do well, and that's when it moved.
So,
So there's
Subbu,
a
what's next for you? What is next for you? You've had a very interesting 25 years, but what's next?
I don't know. We'll see. So look, I'm at the stage where I am reflecting what I need to do. It's been 6 years from with my firm. Neha runs a tech startup in the interior design phase, so she is in the process of launch, fundraising, all of that at this point in time. So there's a lot of adjacent work, right? I will also be hopefully helping her if she wants to take some help from me. But there's a lot of adjacencies around that. So basically, look, I'm reflecting at this point in time on what a lot of people would probably reflect at the beginning of their career. What next, and how can I get a little bit of that curiosity into doing various things? So I'm dabbling in a few side pet projects of mine, a few passion projects of mine. I've been learning a musical instrument and all of that. How do I bring it all together and balance it out with what's still going to be a core career? Look, to answer your question, because will I ever be a portfolio career kind of a guy? I don't know, because I wasn't made of that, but I could be. Meaning, 1 day a week doing this, 2 days a week doing that, 3 days a week doing that, and so on. I've always been a single job type of a person, right? Because that's how I've grown up. I've grown up studying, working on a job, graduating meritocratically, blah 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 blah. But now I'm thinking out on what I could do. So, short answer to your question, I don't know, but there are a few options I'm playing with.
And how do you see AI affecting your job, your day-to-day career, or has it not affected it yet?
Well, it's made life a little easier in terms of look. I'm a senior leader in services, right? Consulting and professional services. It's helped me to the extent that it will help my clients in terms of the stories that I take. I think that way it's made a lot of what I tell the client and the ability to do what I tell easier by usage of AI. Again, from consulting firms and other firms, the ability to get information, the ability to process a few things, it's made it a lot better, a lot quicker in terms of communications and so on. I've fairly recently started using just to see how it goes, right? Various points to think through, communicating a particular thing using the AI tools on hand, and that's been quite helpful as well. Of course, I still make sure that I put my own touch on it, otherwise it doesn't make sense. But it is getting easier and easier. The point again is, look, because I think you're sitting in Silicon Valley, right, and you guys work in this area, you need to filter it out a lot. You can't let the narrative get completely out of hand, which I believe it might still do when people saying we want to do Gen AI this, Gen AI that. For what purpose? My simple philosophy from serving clients is understand what their exam question is. What is it that they're trying to achieve? How do you then deliver that and deliver value? Everything else is a means to that particular end. So that's what I simplistically try to look at. And that's where AI could play a role, will play a role without overdoing it.
So I've never worked at a consulting company. Can you tell me what are some of those questions that clients have come to you recently, say in the last year or so, where they've said, this is the value that we want you to deliver? Like, what questions are clients coming with? Because I feel like, I've run startups for 20 years now, that whenever I've had a question, I've also had an answer.
Okay.
Like, so I'm not sure where a consultant is needed. Like, where is a consultant needed?
It's a good question. And what clients
The
now,
million
it's
dollar
going to be,
question.
yeah, it's going to be what, nearly a centenary, right? Before McKinsey first started consulting with his Carney and a bunch of others. The point is, I think you're right that a lot of clients, when they have a question, they know what the answers are or what the possible answers are. But they would like somebody who's been there, done that, to help them articulate it to the right one, right? Right choice of answers. They would like someone who's been there, done that, to come and help them translate their potential answers to their various team members. If you take a CEO, enterprise agenda, the CXOs, Chief Marketing and Sales Officer, R&D head, procurement, etc. Their agendas will not always match. There'll always be trade-offs because you need, if you want to sell more, sales will want to sell more, right? But supply chain will want to manage their resources better and so on. So how does that trade-off management happen? How do you help a CEO to manage that while making all of them successful? That's where consultants help quite a bit. Consultants also can come in and challenge clients. The client says, hey, my competition is doing a lot of this. They are Gen AIing this, Gen AIing that. What do you do? How can I Gen AI myself? You need to like also have a thick skin and say, hey, look, you don't need to do that right now, or you don't need to do that in this area. That's where a true successful consultant helps helps himself or herself, and of course helps the client, is what I would say. And that's where I think you still need somebody for advice. And if you think about it, right, so there are people who can get to their entire life without any advice, but there are people like me. I would love advice. Sometimes I'm very hesitant to ask for advice on a personal front, on a career front, but I know that I would benefit a lot out of it. And it's the same, if you extend that into the professional services sector, that is exactly what it is.
So now that you're in a leadership role, how much of your day is actually doing the consulting work, and how much of it is doing business development, relationship building? I would assume that most of your day is relationship building now, right?
It has to be a combination depending upon the role, right? Like there are like even within my current firm, in my previous firms, there were roles which were very sales orientated, in which case I would have to do that. But at the same time, I also believe that, look, in consulting, in services and so on, you need to have a high say do. So the clients would look at a leader, a partner who actually says, but also is accountable for ensuring that his team or her team delivers what they say. So I've never been one to step away from it being executed, right? I'm always trying to see it through. Sometimes I roll up my sleeves because, one of the great things I picked up from Carney, we used to call, and I'm sure other firms, most people say that, in terms of a professional skill set, your ability to do something, we have what we have to call a T skill set, T-shaped skill set, where you have a broad brush view across a few areas or a particular area, but you go deep into one, maybe two different areas. So for me, that the horizontal of the T is my ability to talk to CXOs, but at the same time go down into that route in consumer and healthcare, those sort of industry verticals, which I know more than most. But and my depth would be to go into certain functions, supply chain, procurement, sales, and marketing as well now. So in these cases, when I solve a particular problem, I go deep into it. I roll up my sleeves. I've actually gone in and told my analysts and my junior consultants how to do stuff, run some Excel models in terms of whatever it is, financial models, business case, and so on, written workshop material and slides, and so on and so forth, as opposed to doing that. So I would say, to answer your question, my personal choice would be, but depending upon the nature, right now it's about half and half, right? Half in terms of selling, relationship development, half in terms of making sure that nothing goes wrong, making sure I manage my team better, making sure that the deliveries is done, and so on and so forth. That's
How
how
big
I'm
is your
just
team, Subbu? Like, how many people report to you?
look. My roles are changing right now, and when I was in Japan, it was a big, really big team. We had a bunch of couple of big accounts, and if you look at my direct team as well as my adjacent operations team, we had a lot of team, like well into the hundreds. But in certain roles, like the role that I played last year, we keep changing a few things, right? I was anchored on one particular client, which is taking up a lot of my time, and the team that was under me was about 50, 55 or so, with some external consultants and other things coming in on a part-time basis. So it really varies on what we need to do. It's not again horses for courses as you go through various roles, and who
But
knows
50
what's
people is a big team. Uh, like leading a team of
layers.
50. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have that. Again, it
So
varies, right? Japan was really big, right? 800, 900 at some point in time, actually, if you count all the operations folks that were sitting in China.
And was that big, Subbu? Was that big because of Japanese culture and the way of doing business, or was that more because of the account you were doing in
The
Japan?
account I was doing. Yeah.
Right.
so again, I've never been a consultant, and I have a healthy disregard for MBAs. Uh, like Silicon Valley has a healthy disregard for MBAs, and it has a double the scoop of healthy disregard for
Consulting.
consultants.
Yeah.
So, but I'm open minded because I respect you. I think having someone like you on team for any company would be great. So can you take a real example and try to convince me that look, this client came to me with this problem and this is what my team delivered, so that I can moderate my skepticism about consultants.
So let me go back to the. I'll tell you which examples. Let me give an example of this company, which is into automotive lubricants. It's I won't name the company. There was some confidentiality bit. You guys might probably guess it. So they were running a big program across their organization to save $400 million in terms of their EBITDA impact, in terms of their profitability through various areas. And when I was with Carney, we did a big program for them, looking at all aspects of it: the supply chain side of it, the manufacturing side of it, the procurement and buying and sourcing side of it, the operations and the processes, the cost side, people, SG&A cost side of it as well. So I was leading one of those critical areas within the procurement area. Now, what is automotive lubricant? It is essentially you get base oil with some properties, and you add this concoction chemical cocktail called additives, process it, and voila, you get a lot of various properties, right? Detergent properties. You get a lot of lubricant properties and whatnot and so on for various usage. So they were used for OEM first fill. So the BMWs and others would have that particular automotive lubricant as the first fill, and then they would go on, right? There were a lot of claims that were made because of that, which, as in claims, which the properties for this lubricant, which were necessary for the day-to-day running of an automotive engine. Now it's a very serious one, right? Because anything that goes wrong will result in huge lawsuits, and so on. That's the context. Now, the reality, I was doing the strategy for additives purchasing. Additives, there were four companies globally. Two of them were owned by large American, large oil producers. So they're vertically integrated. So we would never get that. So, and there was a oligopoly going on into that. Each of those four, there was competition in one or two small areas, but largely there was a monopoly or duopoly in terms of most of the types of lubricants that we used to buy. So whatever they charge, you had to go with it. Now we couldn't afford to do that, and there was also some crisis brewing in terms of supply and whatnot, because of which pricing even came up. So how do we go about it? We systematically went in and looked at all aspects of this buying. It's not just take the whatever we buy, take the specifications, go negotiate, right? Go backwards all the way to when crude is manufactured. Look at the entire chemistry of all of that. In fact, when I first joined that particular project, I asked my boss, so what do I do? He put me in this thicker book of chemistry and said, read this. And I was like, what? But again, went back, dug deep into my engineering background, worked backwards, looked at all the manufacturing steps, looked at the chemistry of it, looked at all the byproducts of everything, and then figured out how do we get into it. So we broke down the cost components ourselves into various cost models, right? Various raw materials and processing steps that would go in. Built a lot of should cost models and other things. Use that. Use then other aspects of it in terms of basically we broke it down into three major components which were driving the cost. And we did the additives manufacturers did not know that we were actually be able to do that. And as a consultant, I worked with the R&D team of this particular client to make that happen. And we used a lot of that. Armed with all of that, armed with then again, based on what we found out, we went into other smaller manufacturers of those subcomponents to see how we can bring that and use a third party to mix our own additives. It would never have happened that we would replace these Lubrizols and all of these companies, right, by ourselves, but at least some part of it would go. So anyway, I mean, my point is, with all of that, we went in with a strategy of multi-pronged strategy, negotiation strategy with these guys, and we ended up making it happen. We actually took away some part of the business and created our own manufacturing entity to do part of that. Then they realized that we were serious. They came to the negotiation table with an open mind, right, and a partnership bent to come and help with that. So that significantly helped them save a lot of costs, reinvest back to newer and better things. Just another one example around that, right? I can go
No,
Nick,
into
this is
I'll add
brilliant.
something
No,
to
yeah.
Nick, I'm going to add something because now the 3 years of consulting I did 20 years ago is coming out of me, having heard your question. I think the reason Silicon Valley doesn't have too many consultants is because most, or by definition, they're trying to do something that hasn't been done before. And the biggest piece that a consultant can bring is how to improve based on how things across sectors, industries, and other companies have been done in a better way before. So a lot of it, not entirely, but a lot of it is benchmarking and learning for best practices and then thinking more structurally. It also takes time. And sometimes, by definition, startups in Silicon Valley don't have the time or don't have the budget to be able to afford. Now, I'll go one step further. Once these startups, these exact same startups, become big, once they've raised their Series D, if you just see in their top management and middle management how many ex consultants and ex corporate people are there, you will be surprised, or unless you already know. I mean, they just fill
Yep.
up these of the. I mean, you look at Amazon. Amazon is full of ex consultants, people. Half my ex colleagues that are in Amazon, the other half are in BCG.
yeah.
So,
And
so,
if you
so
actually think about it,
that's
look,
a,
Yeah, I gave you an example of maybe one scenario which took months to prepare and make, right? But these days, also, a lot of things happen because people also have the attention span of a gnat, right? If you think about it, you need to move fast. And that's what consulting has also learned from the Silicon Valley: how to fail fast, move forward, how to do hypothesis based MVPs, move forward. And we always, almost always do that. If you don't get an answer, do something else. So I think it's important to get that. And consulting has taught me to do that hypothesis based consulting, right? As opposed to the DMAC and other things like design, this, that, and the other. But hypothesis, make it, cut the hypothesis, decide which one it is, and move on. I think Carney actually was super helpful in terms of aiding my thinking on this front.
So, Subbu,
How
25 years
much?
in consulting. You worked across how many different firms? You mentioned Carney,
So Deloitte,
Genpact.
Accenture, Anderson Consulting internship, leave that out. Deloitte,
Okay.
Bearing Point, Carney, and Genpact now.
So,
And
four and
yeah,
a bit. If you count
four
Accenture,
and
then
a bit.
five.
And Deloitte and
Yeah.
Bearing Point was continuous. Like I said, I followed my boss. So I've changed jobs 2 times, basically.
Hmm. So consultants are famous for being able to distill the top parameters for comparison and benchmarking, and then rating things. How would you rate these 4 or 5 organizations on the top three parameters? So, which are the top three parameters you would rate them on, and how would you rate them?
I I don't know if I can answer that question because look, I'm not going
Come
to say
on,
it depends
consultants will
because I've
always answer a question even if they don't know. Consultants can answer any
it's
question.
not that I don't know. Look, I have my own personal experiences with all of them, right? And there were some solid experiences which all of them have given me. Look, you won't believe it. I've evolved significantly as a professional in my personality, in terms of my ability to talk. 25 years ago, I was a very, like, so those of you who knew me, I was very introverted type of a person, right? I've had a massive fear of public speaking. And consulting was probably completely the wrong profession for me to get into. Go into a room full. I still remember my first project was I was last to present my piece. They ran out of time, and my boss told me I had 30 minutes to prepare, and I prepared a lot. And I actually went in days knowing my script and everything. My senior partner told me, Rajesh, you have 2 minutes. Just go talk about 3 points. I froze. I said, no, I can't do that. I literally did that, right? That's what happened to me. But now I'm a different way around. So if you think about it, there have been a lot of failure points across each of these firms. How I've kind of got up and moved forward is an important thing. So to me, I think a lot of them have helped me do it. Right now, if you look at it from a market point of view, each of them is very different. Deloitte at that point in time, like I said, systems integration and everything else was happening with a lot of strength on BPR before a big ERP implementation, before all of that thing. Bearing Point, very small. It in fact imploded across the world except Europe. It still survives as a firm brand in Europe. Um, Great place because it got me my grounding and brought me into this. Carney, fantastic in terms of what they've been doing over the last century now, nearly. But over the last 6 years, they've evolved significantly. In fact, after I joined, they've evolved significantly. Genpact, again, another superb firm which started off with the GE Foundation. Now, what is happening with all of them? And Genpact also, one of the reasons I joined is because of the whole convergence of what clients expect out of consultants, right? Clients in the past would go to the MBB strategy firms for top level, right? CEO level, the big fours for finance, accounting, and certain areas of it, boutiques for certain things, Genpacts and the others for BPO. Technology would be whatever, the which firms or anything else. Now there's a lot of convergence, and these firms are also trying to play on that convergence by using their strengths and flexing the other muscles to make sure that people listen to. And that's what we are in the process of doing in the last 5 6 years, maybe a decade. But in the next decade, that's what the firms who are able to do that a lot better, were able to put themselves into clients' shoes and solve a particular problem. They are the ones who will survive and, of course, succeed. So to me, I think
Okay, so
each of my firms
I
have various
understood.
things.
I understood, and all firms have been good, and that's fair. That's fine. You've learned a lot from every firm, but let's particularly look at the differences between these firms.
Huh.
And differences doesn't have to be good or bad. But let's talk about culture or the work culture. How is Genpact different from, say, a Deloitte versus a Bearing Point versus the other firms you worked in? Is there
Look,
a difference? Firstly, is there a difference in work culture?
there is.
Firstly.
There is, right?
Hmm.
There will be, based on how these firms go. Now, okay, one of the biggest ways to look at it, Genpact is 120,000 strong entrepreneurship, if you want to call it, because they keep doing new things all the time. They want to keep doing new things at the time. But at the same time, Genpact is very focused in terms of which markets they want to play with, which areas they want to play with, which industry sectors they want to serve, and go with that. We've had a change of CEO recently, who is now ultra laser focused on margins. Ultra laser focused on what they want to do. So I respect this firm a lot. Uh, I've had a great set of experiences across Europe and Japan and others over there. Now, if you think about Deloitte as an organization or bearing point, it's very regional. While it's a global brand, it's still very national, regional in terms of how the partnership works. Deloitte, especially UKI, is very different from. I was part of Southeast Asia at that point in time. There would be global programs where they will sometimes work with each other, usually work with each other, but it will still be fairly local in terms of the decision making, very federated from that point of view. Bearing point, of course, we mentioned, it's now exists only here, so you can differentiate along the regional side of it. Culturally, I think maybe one of the areas. Hi.
Hey, Vanya.
Hello.
So I think she might be a management consultant for the future, but we can't afford to. I see my
Yeah.
children eventually could be right.
She also knows when dad is on the camera. Anything I say,
Anything can
he will.
can be
Yeah.
taken.
Anything
Yeah,
can be taken, including
Everything can.
screen time password for Netflix.
That
exactly,
was, you
exactly.
know what? Let's digress a little bit. When I was during the pandemic, a lot of our work was done on Zoom and other things, right? And I was going through a particularly stressful period with this very needy client back in Japan and so on. Great clients, I love all of them, but there was so much happening. So my son Vyom, who was 4 and 5, he was always around, right? What could you do during the time when you were at home? So he would come in sometimes, and I would also bribe him to do that. And whenever you'd come in, like suddenly the whole narrative changed in the call. Everyone would like hi hi. So
Yeah.
oftentimes when the meeting got too stressful, I was like, "Yo, come here," and I would pick him on camera just to diffuse the whole damn thing, take a breath, and then move forward. I did that a lot of times, and it was so much fun. I tell you.
One thing
Anyway,
I find very interesting is that Genpact at its core is an Indian company, which not a lot of people know.
yeah,
Like, though it's headquartered, it's like domiciled in Bermuda,
yeah.
headquartered in New York, but it's actually was formed in Delhi.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
G Capital offshored, and it was called G Capital, G Overseas. In fact, when Anil and Narayan Naru joined back from campus, it was that, right?
Yeah,
2007 is when they
Yes,
became
yes.
independent. Uh, so yeah, it's very much the core is there. But to be honest, now it's very global. We've got tens of thousands of people across other areas, LATAM, Brazil and Mexico and so on. Romania, we've got about I think 6.5, 7,000 or so, and other parts of Europe as well. So yeah, it is truly a global firm in that way. China has a ton of folks, right? I used to work so closely with them.
yeah,
Yeah,
but Infosys and Wipros,
I remember a story that I heard about Genpact that when Gillette got acquired, the symbol G was quickly snapped up by Genpact.
Yeah, correct.
The
So much
ticker,
so that Google
ticker G.
didn't get G, right?
Yeah, yes.
That is true. So Genpact
So,
is G, Google is not.
Goog. Google is GOOG, right? Now that you have been across firms, across geographies, uh,
Hmm.
what would you, number one, tell your um, own self in 1999 about how to approach a consulting career, and what are the things that you absolutely would want yourself to have known, but now you know in hindsight?
You need to be a sponge early stages of your career to soak everything in, but at the same time you need to be bold to go outside your comfort zone. Always operate as a consultant, to be a successful consultant, slightly outside your comfort zone. You might still spend 80% of the time in your comfort zone, but learn new things, try to do new things, be curious. That's how you keep progressing and learning. I probably on hindsight did not do that as much then, which is also one of the things that I want to make up for right now. And over the past years, I jumped at the Japan opportunity, even though that was completely against the grain that I was built out of. So I would say that's one thing. Do things which are a bit more uncomfortable and bold. I think read, learn, listen all the time, right? No one's going to tell you. Yeah, I mean, consulting firms and other firms, we have structured learning programs, but at the same time, the time that you put in learning, podcasts, talk to people, talk to your classmates, talk to others who are going through journeys, listen to podcasts like this where a bunch of people of common background come and banter about their life experiences, because there's so much you can get from your life experience that you can't, or other your friends life experiences, or and so on, which you can't get anywhere else. Yeah, there's a lot of content, but there's again a lot of ways to also tone and summarize those content, right? Because you were talking about AI, and I've been listening to this app called Headway. Last year it was Blinkist. Summarize a book into 7 pages of nuggets. So keep doing all of that, right? I would say that's the other one.
So a
And
lot of
third,
people from IIMs and other MBAs,
hmm,
when they apply for consulting, they have this big vision and dream that we'll go into a company, we'll be advising the CEO, and then they land up a job even in the top firms, and they are assigned कि यार ये वाला Excel को अब type करो. Is that
correct.
true or is that an extreme?
That is true. Look, and those are some of the things which will change or which are already changing because of AI. A lot of research work, right? Law has changed significantly. For that matter, consulting. A lot of simplify communications type of work. That's become a lot faster, better, more accurate through AI, and hence the consultant can do more things. Like firms like McKinsey did this 20, 25 years ago. They had a center in Chennai. They probably still do. So people would scratch something, send it out, and it would get the slides back. Now, the point is that the third point which I was going to make is also this, right? Don't be afraid of doing any type of role, and the best way to learn is to learn from the ground up. Then you can really talk to and resonate. What's also happening, look, I've also worked with a lot of uh, more recent graduates who want to do CEO type of work on day one, which not doesn't always happen. The point is also a lot of these people have done CEO type of work because they've all dabbled in startups or investments or others, right? So for them, it's slightly different. But at the same time, these are the people you need to get work out of. So you need to have a little bit of a balanced approach at this point in time as well. But what I was going to say, the other thing which I think is very important is take opportunities when they come along. Like one thing which I probably didn't do is take certain opportunities when they came along. I had an opportunity, in fact, to come back from London to Mumbai to work with Reliance, and we were doing a big program with where Mukesh himself was involved. That would have been a cool experience. It would have killed me. It would have killed my personal life, and that was why I chose not to take it up. But again, when you are if you want to be decide what sort of consultant you want to be, right, and where you want to go, but make the most out of all the opportunities that you get and just go on with it. And you can always take a back seat, relax, do other things later, right? Consulting is not the be all and end all of everything
Subbu,
that you do.
why working for Reliance and directly with Mukesh should have killed you? Where does that sentiment come from?
Sorry. The travel part, for me,
Okay.
look, I had a young kid, and I've seen my colleagues work 6 days, 6.5 days a week, burn out actually. So yeah, the travel part of it, going in, week out from London to Bombay or coming back every 2 weeks. I've done that, yeah. I've actually done that a lot. Russia was quite tough that way. I've done a lot of those miles. So I kind of figured I would have gotten burnt out. I would.
So, Subbu, you talked about this burnout, and I just taking slightly serious statement here. Recently, there was a news of
Yeah.
one McKinsey consultant
Yeah.
committing suicide because of overwork and so on. And since then, there's been a lot of talk about how consultants, especially at the entry level, are seriously overworked. So, has that been something which you have also experienced? Has it changed over the years? And now that
Look,
you have been in different roles, what's your perspective across these different roles on how that is?
Look, I'll be very honest here. There's also a very cultural thing here going on. If you think
Mhm.
about India is very tough that way, and I've heard from a lot of my friends that we have to differentiate ourselves from the 25 others who joined from our own base school with the same background. How do we do that? By doing extra stuff. I worked a lot with Korea. Korea is like, well, even Japan, right? When I went, the pandemic changed it a little bit. 18-hour days was the norm. Weekends were the norm. So it's not fun. And look, I think we, slightly serious note, I know we need to, mental health issues are very real. Like I can open up and say I was going through a very rough patch many years ago. I did seek professional help and all that. A lot of various things going on, right, at the end of the day, which make you question various choices. I think it's important that we all genuinely talk about it to somebody, to anybody, to obviously your spouse and partner. That's the first thing. But friends, and I don't know whether, and we're all cut out of different ilks, but people are not necessarily, people are never happy to say that we are weak, but it's not a weakness. It's actually strengths if you come out and talk about it in the open, whatever is bothering you, right? I chose to wait quite a little bit, but thankfully I did arrest whatever I was going through in time. So I think it's important what you're saying. It's important to keep getting the pulse and the pole of what is happening. It's important for employers to be able to very proactively be doing that. Otherwise this is going to be not great, right, for this profession as such, but in general, for MBAs and others, right, going into various things. So try
Okay,
to.
Subbu, enough of the serious talk. I'm more
So
interested
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the fun
one
talk.
last thing I
नहीं,
want to
अब ये
talk
बताओ, tell me about the roving eye. What was your involvement in roving eye?
What was roving eye? Was it some kind of something, right? I was like, what? I don't
What
know.
was
Yeah.
really good, Subbu. The way you said, oh, what was roving eye?
That doesn't work.
Huh?
We have heard
नहीं,
from certain people that Subbu could have been the roving eye. Is that right?
यार ये आशीष ने ये बोला होगा क्या? मैं तो मतलब टोटल फ्रॉड
मैं
लगता
तो
है.
मुझे नहीं पता क्या तू उसके साथ कर रहा था. Did you confide in him?
I was not at all. Okay, like I was very. You guys know me, right? I was so unimaginative, such a boring, introverted kind of guy. मैं क्या करूं यार? मैंने ऐसे कुछ किया नहीं है. मैं किसी और के बारे में कब सोचने का तो टाइम ही नहीं मिलता था. So it wasn't me for sure.
So who
I
was
would
it
have
in
done
your
many
opinion?
other things, but not
If
roving
it
eye.
wasn't you, if it
Huh?
wasn't you, who's it? Who
I
was
have
it if
no
it
idea,
wasn't you?
boss. Oh, चल
I
रहा
know you
था ना
don't have an
काफी सारा
idea, but
discussion.
who would
Wasn't
you?
it Gautam Jain? Sorry, I swore that I won't take names in this particular meeting, but I thought he was the prime suspect in our WhatsApp group messaging. It could have been Prashant
Is
Dogra.
it?
He could be the roving guy for at this time of the.
Hmm.
Anyway, I'm just saying. I just took two names
By the way,
randomly. Sorry, guys.
now that you're saying it, and given that Vix is the most interested in asking others, I have a feeling that he might have
वही
been
है,
roving eye.
वही है यार. देख अभी वो साधु साधु संत वाले जो होते हैं ना, वही होते हैं सबसे बड़े कमीने. तो विक्स तो थोड़ा साधु संत वाला माहौल दिखा रहा था ना सबको.
I know, I know. I mean, I don't know about roving eye whether Subbu was in or not, but Subbu was definitely part of what was then called the Govinda fan club. That was
Okay.
basically all masala and all the Vegas things in the 90s, especially movie songs. And I have a
Kapuri
feeling,
songs.
and this is coming out of, I've always thought that there aren't too many people who, at least too many in my circles, except for Subbu, who know the weirdest and the vaguest Hindi film songs of movies that people haven't even heard the name of the movie, but he'll know the lyrics of some of those songs, I can assure you. I thought I was alone in knowing that, but then I found someone very similar who knew even the songs
Yes.
that I thought no one else did. Is that right, Subbu? Have you ever considered me competition?
We've never played Antakshari together, right? Like when we play Antakshari in groups, we don't do that very often. But I'm quite a popular captain's pick because I can come up with songs from God knows where else. It sticks to your mind. If you think about it, go back to our early days of Doordarshan, the jingles and the songs. Some of them completely stick to your head, and suddenly something will trigger that off. That happens to me when I play Antakshari. So कुछ ना कुछ तो हो जाता है, गाना ट्रिगर हो जाता है. तो
But
कल
which is
हम
the
ड्राइव कर रहे
80s
थे.
jingle that comes to your mind? If I ask you, what the top 80s jingle that comes to your mind?
वॉशिंग पाउडर निर्मा, वॉशिंग पाउडर निर्मा, दूध सी सफेदी. तेरा दांत तो दूध जितना सफेद है यार. मेरे माँ से आए. There you go. Sorry. There you go. That suddenly came to my mind. But कुछ ना कुछ तो आता है ना, like what I referred earlier when you talked about chocolate. कुछ खास है. हम सभी में क्या बात है, क्या स्वाद है जिंदगी में. So there are things which stick with you. Like there are songs. Yesterday it was raining and suddenly Anu Malik came to my mind. देखो बारिश हो रही है. It's raining. It's raining.
It's
मेरा
raining.
दिल रो रहा है. My heart is paining. It's paining. तेरे लिए.
It's like classic Anuman.
that is the best rain song, I must say. Also, I mean,
course,
बाकी
yeah.
सारे ज़्यादा popular songs हैं. This is the most underappreciated, which I think it never got its due.
And I know we haven't spoken about food, but you guys must know this song, right? तू मेरा chicken fry, तू मेरा fish fry, कभी ना कहना कुड़िए bye bye. And then the girl is actually probably he's like hardcore non-veg. The girl is vegetarian and South Indian.
Yeah.
तू मेरा
Yeah.
मस्सा मुसा, मैं तेरी मसाला डोसा. मतलब क्या हो रहा है? This is like the whole veg non-veg divide meeting through a Bollywood song.
I think that veg non-veg divide everyone knew, but the thing is कि उनकी कभी शादी होकर how would they have compatibility issues, नहीं?
मेरे को देखना,
हम्म,
मैं क्या था यार, वेजिटेरियन था, टी टोटलर था. मैं तो हमारे पड़ोस में एक्चुअली वी हैड अ कोंकणी फैमिली. एवरी टाइम दे वुड फ्राई फिश और समथिंग, वी वुड ऑल बी लाइक क्या हो रहा है, nauseated completely, literally, right? My grandmother, my great grandmother, we were all in the living together at that time, right, in Bombay. And now I've come to a point where I love my meat rare, and so on. I love tartars and whatnot. So yeah, it's an evolution again. It's a mental block. If you unblock it, then you can do whatever you want.
I think many
Yeah.
people would call going from being a pure veg to a non-veg eater as a devolution rather than evolution, but that's a separate debate.
That
we will-
changes from time to time. Like, I was a pure vegetarian earlier. Started eating meat when I moved to Delhi, and yeah, my wife still doesn't eat meat, so we don't get meat at home. But my kids started eating, so we only eat outside.
Chao, teri family mein, there is every generation has this huge shift when they move to Delhi, right? Delhi has played like your son. You were mentioning in a previous episode that his vocabulary increased when he went to Delhi.
No, he didn't
Right.
go to Delhi. He had one roommate from Delhi.
Oh, his
and one
roommate was
from
Delhi.
Bombay.
So Delhi has played a big role in your
Yes.
every generation. No, but honestly, so I grew up in Delhi. The reason I say that is, I mean, I've been a fairly voracious meat eater over the years. And more recently, last few years, I've tried to cut down. I'm not saying that I'm pure veg, but I avoid it as far as possible. And that's just a choice.
Engineering में मैं BJ में वो UDCT बोल के एक था, which was a tiny one but the best chemical engineering department. So it was behind mechanical engineering building. Again, we used to randomly run each other off and on. And it's a small world, yeah. Well, actually, it's not, but still, it's a small world. So I knew Hemant as well, and we connected quite a bit before. Oh, Reliance.
I mean,
Reliance. So
in
we had some
England,
common friends as
in
well.
England, in London, we say it's a small world, but India has way more population. It's not as small a world.
Bhaiya, I will tell you one anecdote. हमारे तेरे को FP याद है? FP, Fountain Pepsi. I got FP, Cyrus Brocha का एक है, where you used to get Pepsi from
Yeah,
the
that one,
fountain,
that FP.
premix concentrate.
Fountain Pepsi.
That FP. So that FP, one of the first FP installations in Bombay was in the Naka in King Circle, which was on outside my mechanical engineering, Hemant's whatever. So in a way, that was a very popular FP. So we used to go. हम लोग ना हमेशा क्लास के बाद FP पीने जाते थे.
It's a choice.
Subbu, you were the neighbor for Mix, right? So tell us something that we don't already know.
About Mix.
Yeah.
Mix के बारे में
How
क्या
studious he
बोलूं?
was, how he always
Yes.
wanted to.
He was very studious.
Don't seed ideas, Mick.
He was always taking care of the rest of us by giving us food and drink. What else can I say? He was very loved by everybody in Bangalore.
This is
He
not
used to
his
get this,
eulogy, Subbu. He has not died yet. Tell us something when he's still alive.
No, he was
He
so
felt
loved
very-
that My
You're
room
saying
was
things
so
which
far
everyone
away from
anyways
the.
knows.
That is also
Everyone
true.
knows
Miggy was
already.
loved by
So
everybody. He had this. He had this bottle of Versace green jeans. I don't know why I remember this. Versace green jeans बोल के एक perfume था. 2 साल से मतलब I'm sure he kept bottle. चला रहा था मेरे को लगा ये कुछ तो टॉप खोल के कुछ अंदर के चला रहा होगा क्या because he's done that when it comes to whiskey he's done that he said Subbu you know social experiment है तू पहला आदमी है तू पहला पर्सन है जिसने पकड़ लिया मुझे नहीं तो वो यहाँ पे खोल के वो सेंसबरीज का उन ब्रांड डाल के सबको खिलाता बोलता था सोशल एक्सपेरिमेंट तो मुझे नहीं पता ग्रीन जीन्स के बारे में क्या करता था बट यस दैट वाज हिज फेवरेट परफ्यूम
And that same bottle lasted
now
2 years, huh?
that you remind me of the green jeans, I had completely forgotten. मैंने ऐसा किया नहीं था यार, कभी नहीं किया था. But whiskey, you're right. I mean, I'm very. I mean, I started that. I'll tell you in 2000. Coincidentally, Subbu. So the first time I met you in Singapore, if you remember that trip, I think it was 2003, if
yeah.
I'm not mistaken. And
Correct,
I
yeah.
was
I
in
was
Singapore
married,
और
came
रास्ते
home,
में ड्यूटी फ्री में मैंने जॉनी वॉकर ब्लू लेबल खरीदी which was priced more than my monthly salary but I anyways got it. वैसा ठीक है यार ब्लू लेबल नहीं आई है ये तो लेनी बनती है and I got it. I told all my colleagues कि यार मेरे पास ब्लू लेबल है and everyone was like कि blue label we will have one sip of blue label. सबने करा था. As it happened, the first day, 2 of my very close friends came, and between the 3 of us, we finished the whole bottle. It was so smooth as if we didn't even realize that we were finishing the whole bottle, and you know how it goes. Now, there are so many other people who had promised to come the next day. So that was the start of that social experiment. I took some Royal Challenge, I took some Black Label, and 1 or 2 others. I made my own blended in that, just so no one can recognize. So that was the first time. And then once I had done that, the number of people, number of colleagues and friends who had Blue Label in 2003 at my house is more than the entire sales of Blue Label or import of Blue Label in India. I can assure you that. सबने
Every
Blue Label पी
experience
के
started getting better and better.
मिक्स के घर पे Blue Label पीने के लिए लाइन लगी हुई थी और सबको पिलाई, सबको खुल के पिलाई.
और सब ज़्यादा खुश हो गए थे. With every single dram of Blue Label, everyone was like, "Oh my God, क्या हो गया ये तो?" सही है.
And you were like making your own blend, so nobody could say ये Johnny Walker है.
That
And
was the thing because you know sometimes some people can discover कि यार ये तो मैं रोज RC पीता हूँ मेरे को तो RC लग रही है ये तो and Black Label वाले भी. So I had to like do something. I did my next experiment
But
was
did you mix it consistently or it was random mixes for different
नहीं,
it was
कहाँ
different people
consistency,
यार.
boss?
It's not as if they can compare, right? मैं तो कोई randomly बताता था.
हाँ, it's like Master Blender's batch, right? So who knows? Like I remember, I went for a whiskey tasting session and signed up for a Shiva's master blending thing, and they have an access, and I'm sure some consulting firm must have told them to do it. But they have the access of aroma, taste, this, that, and the other, and then they give you all this mixer whiskeys, and you use droppers to mix it up into what you want. You taste a few, and the taste that you like, you note it down, and you can mix it, and they'll give you a 200 ml bottle. मैं ले गया था इसको खुशी खुशी में इतना खुश था and I went for a friend's 40th birthday and I gave it to her and said कि just for you on this day I made this just for you. She's like kept it and I think it's in the back of her shelf somewhere. कोई किसी ने कुछ पिया नहीं उसके बारे में. But again it's a story that sells, right? If you think about it. So there you go. तुम लोग are you guys
And so
whiskey
what's
fans?
the
Because
no
you guys-
man, I'm still just a wine and a beer drinker. I've never got into whiskey.
Good man. Actually, beers are amazing, by the way. So
And
there are
the
some.
beer that I had at Guru Garden in Banarghatta Road, I've not had that chilled a beer ever. And then I did a lot of experiments कि खुद beer खरीदा हूँ, उसको chill किया है. And then I realized that it was my age at that time that gave me that experience of wow. So it's like, and because also I was experiencing beer for the first time, so I can't create that experience again. It's not about
I'll actually add something to that. Having worked in the industry, just like Subbu was talking about chocolates and all that. So liquor industry में consulting किसी ज़माने में करी थी मैंने. There is one big reason why Indian beer chills more, and that is because it has glycerin, and the glycerin is there as a to protect it from going bad in the hot weather, but it helps the Indian beer chill more. Most of the beers you get
Ah,
UK, US, it doesn't have
There
glycerin.
you go.
oh,
But
is
that's the
that
thing.
the reason?
Glycerin,
Because I keep
Indian
buying. Yeah,
bottled beer has glycerin.
very interesting. So, Mix, what's the story about your perfume? So, did you use the same bottle for 2 years?
No, I don't think it was 2 years. I think I had two of those similar, very similar ones. I do now remember green jeans one, yeah. But there was another one, and again, if someone tells me, I think because see, back in the day, in the 90s, the way we used to get perfumes is I have part of my family, my cousins in the US. So they used to come annual trips or every other year and get some gifts like perfumes. And that was my thing. I used to have a Tag Heuer watch and a green jeans perfume, two or three things. That was in IIMB because in 97 they had come. So I had got my goodies in for 98 and 99 from 97.
I had a massive breakup with my then girlfriend back from Bombay, and anyway, all of those things, right? So I kind of took it quite to heart, and I was completely down in the doldrums, and that's where I think kind of helped me stick it together, right? And obviously, Ashish Gokhale was one of them, and thanks to Ash being with you guys, right? Miggy, you personally, you were one of them as well. Like I can name a few names, right? Neeraj Shah. Then Munish Gautam was right next to him on the other side. I was in C block at that point in time. Couple of our seniors, Andy and others, these guys like made it kind of happen. Then of course I was in a fantastic group with Koti and Prasan and so on. Right, so we had a very good time with that, and those guys also helped me kind of keep it up. And then I realized यार बहुत टेंशन ले रहा हूँ यार लाइफ में क्या है क्या कोटी बोलता था सब मिथ्या है सच में सब मिथ्या है कितना सोचना पड़ेगा ये सब चीज के बारे में so we just kind of I just went on with it and after that it was all about experience like I again second term third term yeah okay got a decent summer internship had a great time although the summer internship itself was an interesting thing in a carbon black plant in Durgapur where every day I
Wow.
would go in and I would be covered with a layer of soot come back scrub
Wow.
it all up all my clothes were 10 shades darker even though we used to wash, I used to wash it every day or
How
get it
was
washed
that?
every day. But
How
look,
was
it was
that?
a
How was that? Durgapur.
Durgapur was fairly. This is Philips Carbon Black Limited. It was part of the RPG group. It was a very interesting insight into how consulting works in India. Right, I was doing a project which, and then I presented right to the CEO of the company. So I was the chief guest. I was one of the key people. Right, so I was set up in their plush guest house with people at my beck and call, taking good care of me with food, drink, and everything. I used to go to Calcutta once in a while for it. Had a good time overall. It was still very lonely at the end of the day. It was just me, and there was a senior guy who was working with Anderson Consulting at that time. He had just joined, and I was doing my summer internship. So, बस ऐसे ही कुछ था. So, ठीक था. At the end of the
Is it lonely as a new consultant in consulting because you're posted somewhere? Is it lonely?
It is actually, right? If you think about it, I'll give you another example. It is because you have to go and look, you have to be if you're an out and out extrovert and if you've been through that, you can bond with anybody. Or if you're adventurous, you can go and create your own adventure anywhere. Like at this point in time, right now, my personality is a complete about turn of what I was 25 years ago. So I feel like if I go somewhere alone, I can still find things to do. I can still go and, create my own experiences. At that point in time, it was different. Interestingly, the very first one of the very first projects that I did when I moved to Deloitte in Singapore was with Philips, the lighting company. Again, I had my 25th birthday in Manila over a weekend. I decided I was there kicking off a project on Thursday or Friday, and then next week. So I decided I'll just stay there over the weekend. Didn't come back, and that was the first and the only birthday where I was spent completely alone. Right, but I went around the city, ate and drank. I tried out a lot more culinary delights with black ink pasta and whatnot, right? Which was all of these things were novelty for me. So I kind of tried to get out of my shell. No pun intended with this. Well, squids don't have shells, but you know what I mean, crustaceans. So yeah, that's exactly what I did. But it is tough. I will. You have to kind of figure out a way to to cope with it. You have to have your own coping mechanisms to make it happen, for sure. Again, experience style. Second year, mein to IIM was a good thing. We chose out a bunch of electives. People used to say fourth term, I don't take the toughest. I ended up saying, chuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. Apna kuch to, I remember I chose one or two subjects more than I should. Kida tha. Of course, I got completely roasted with all the grades, with all that. But theek hai, abhi, right now, it's all hindsight. At that point in time, consumer behavior se leke sab kuch. Consumer behavior, I remember, I was in a group with marketing geniuses. Ashish Gokhale was a marketing genius, right? Unilever में क्या क्या नहीं किया वो, again Brazil में
Yeah,
जाके क्या क्या नहीं किया. He was literally, he was Ashish the redeemer.
जिसको बोलते हैं चौका मारा, फर्स्ट टर्म में चौका मारा, right? That's marketing genius. First टर्म में चौका मारा.
That's it. That's what you need to do. So yeah, actually interesting, right? If you think about it, how many people have stuck with marketing from the beginning? There are a few, I know, but yeah. So look,
No one, almost no one, almost no one. Everyone moved to finance or something else.
Colgate now. तू Colgate में था.
No, stuck to marketing. We're talking about 25 years down the line.
Yeah, okay.
The only one I know is someone who joined with me called Arvind Chintamani.
हाँ, वो तो अभी भी Colgate में ही है ना.
I totally respect him. He's been there. He went on with it, and now he's leading the Canada business of Hills.
क्या बात है. In fact, I think even Bhai Sanjay stuck with it, if I remember correctly.
But he's in a corporate, right? ITC or something like that.
But उसमें भी, I think he does marketing. Anyway, I know what you're saying. Brand, yeah. But interestingly, I ended up doing a lot more marketing over the last 10-15 years. Be it at Carney, with a lot of work with all the agencies, right? From a point of view of how to get the best out of them. And that's what I ended up doing in the last few years at Genpact, working with CMOs, chief sales officers, and so on. So yeah, it's been great that way, right? The whole experiential led things.
So that brings me to a question. So many countries you've worked in, so many countries. I've never been to Tokyo, for instance, and Russia, just like most of us. Of course, we've been to London. Obviously, we stay in, and Singapore. I have visited a couple of times. How's the? I mean, you spent Tokyo in what, in the lockdown phase. Were you able to enjoy it at all, or was that a missed opportunity?
Actually, we actually enjoyed it quite a bit. What Japan did was Japan closed the borders, their international borders, but within Japan, it was never a forced lockdown. Japan believes in individuals' rights, so they would never force anybody. They would request people to stay at home, or they'll request people when you go out, obviously wear a mask, sanitize, and do all of that. And they would do that. They did that even before the pandemic, masks and other things, right? Uh, so what they then also did was at some point in time, in order to let businesses keep on running and reduce unemployment and whatnot, they incentivized locals, as in people who residents of Japan, to travel around Japan, offering big discounts, offering spending money and whatnot. So in a way, they encourage that in a responsible manner, socially responsible manner. So we made the most out of those opportunities. We actually traveled the length and breadth of Japan, sans the tourists, because you would always have the Koreans, Chinese, Australians, anywhere, everybody, right? For through winter. Winter had the best snow. I in fact learned skiing. All of us did properly in Japan. We went a few times. We went to these beautiful places without a lot of crowds and so on. So we did experience it quite a bit. And Tokyo itself, coming back to Tokyo, they had multiple restrictions, as they call it. Restaurants are supposed to close at 8, and if they close at 8, they'll be given some incentives. If they don't close at 8, they'll be penalized. There were still some large restaurants which employed a few thousand people actually told the government to sort off, and they said, look, we have to feed all of them. The only way we'll survive is if we stay open throughout. So these places flouted the government's rule. They're okay to pay the few thousand or a few 10,000 in terms of penalty, but and these were the places where expats would typically go in. So we did really nothing really stopped us significantly. But of course, we were trying to be as responsible as possible. We had a great time. I would say that way. Nothing
That
stopped
paying
us
a
from enjoying it.
penalty and still continuing business as usual reminds me of all these Googles and Apples when they are fined and they do the settlement and
Oh,
still
yeah.
continue doing the same data.
There you go.
You see, yeah.
Subbu,
If the
what's your
penalty,
experience with racism in London and UK?
No, UK may hardly. No, in fact, none. There was once when we first came in, when some guy came and we were just walking past. He literally brushed us aside. But I don't know whether it was racism or he was just plain drunk. Most people get plain drunk here. But that was the only instance that I still remember that, because at that point in time I was like, this was month 2 into London, and we weren't sure. We'd heard of the sporadic cases of racism here and there. Maybe because of that, I assume that. But in reality, nothing's happened. Yeah, to be very honest.
What about
Even if the
Japan?
Japan may
What?
look, Japan may. I wouldn't. I won't go and accuse somebody of being racist, but there is some undertones of us and them there. Japan, Tokyo, especially Tokyo is especially has two societies, right? The local Japanese and the others. The others would include expats, but also would include, like, my children went to British school in Tokyo, the only British school in the entire Japan. There are a few American schools, international schools. They had Japanese classmates. Some of them were both parents Japanese, but because the parents had worked abroad and so on, they were there. Some of them would have one parent as Japanese, one parent non, and so on. That's how it happened. So there is that thing. There is some level of xenophobia. Unfortunately, Neha got caught up with a bunch of once or twice with that, and it's not fun at all. Like, she got into a cycling accident, and anyway, I don't want to go into the detail, but that xenophobia does exist. Now, I would call it more lack of cultural and international awareness, rather than any form of vindictiveness. I would probably uh, justify it to that extent, because Japan has never needed to be a global country, right? Japan also prides itself in coming back from the ashes. Yeah, there are a lot of things in Japanese history which are not great, the cruelty towards imperialism and so on. But the Second World War did
Did
them.
you? So I keep reading in media that in Japanese trains they take photos of school-going girls and all that. Is that real or is that just media? Like, is the attitude towards girls a little bit?
नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. There's nothing like that. In
which
fact, it's so
मीडिया में पढ़ रहा है या तेरी साइट्स पे मिल रही हैं?
नहीं यार मैंने एक्चुअली मीडिया में पढ़ा है that Japan has this whole culture of comics which almost border on pedophilia.
Dude, that is
so
manga. Manga is
that is
everything goes in manga, and there are different types of manga.
yeah. And boss, look, I'll look at it this way. There are exceptions to everywhere. Honestly,
Sure.
ये गुड़गांव वगैरह में नहीं होता है, या तो लंदन
Yeah.
में. Anyway, my point is,
Yeah.
Japan, actually, Tokyo is the safest place. In fact, Zoya was 11 when we moved there. She went to school on her own, right? Took a train on her own, went on her own. And it's as safe as that, right? Which is
She was
instead of
taking her own train at 11, at the age of 11.
the age of 11, she would cycle.
Wow.
At the age of 12, combination of trains and buses. So it was perfectly safe.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah,
That's
I
huge.
think the one or two exceptions would always get blown out of proportion, and always there's. Yeah. So that's. I think I would say completely otherwise.
So one thing I realized is one very strong feeling I have is that we have all finished half innings of our lives. Like if you think of life as a one day match, like
Like, looking at,
half
yeah.
of the innings is gone, the other half of the innings is left, and if you look at the number of days most of us is left is like 300 multiplied by 40 or 300 multiplied by 50, right? 300 multiplied by 50 is 15,000 days. That's what we have left. And what I realized is that the most important thing in your second century or the second innings is health, right? Because
Yeah.
if you don't have your health after the age of 60, 65, you start into having mobility problems, you can't climb stairs and all that. So, do you do anything specific for your health, or has health become a bigger factor in your life as you look forward, or no?
Look, good you mentioned that, and I've always prided myself in having great metabolism, fairly good resistance, especially after my childhood and early days when I was quite sickly, very bad asthmatic, a lot of allergies, this, that, and the other. But then the next 2 decades were great. But now I'm to a point where obviously you see my bar behind me. It's not, it's good, but it's not good, if you know what I mean. So I have come to a realization that health is super critical. Uh, Again, like many of us, our parents' generation, they're not getting healthier, right? So many of us have gone through losses and so on. I'm going through a phase. My dad's suffering from dementia. Quite a few things. There are a lot of realities that hit you. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I am taking it seriously. I am watching what I eat. I need to watch a little bit more on what I drink. I am trying to go to the gym fairly regularly. I am starting certain things, certain steps. Rather, I have started certain steps, which will hopefully do me and the rest of us good as well. Yeah, that's kind of where I think it. We need to be very serious about it. We need to keep measuring ourselves very seriously about it. We need to know what are the real threats that impact us because of hereditary reasons or family reasons, and protect ourselves against it. And that's where science, advances in science and technology can help us quite a bit. To that extent, right? I honestly think, and Manish, share your thoughts. The healthcare systems in places. To me, I've had an exceptional experience on NHS. I don't know anybody who will say
Exceptionally good.
exceptionally good, actually. Well, I won't say if it's exceptional. It is doing its job, right? Because it helped us quite a bit when there were complications in pregnancies. It helped us quite a bit when certain things needed to happen and hospitalization needed to happen. Helped us in certain things when my son fell, got a big gash, and he was seen to, a lot of things. There are things which are wrong, but a lot of things are right. And I think having access to that healthcare and using it wisely is very critical as well. But the first thing starts up here. You need to know that, yes, we need to seek help for whatever issues you might have physically, mentally, physiologically.
Yeah, two things that are standing out to me as I enter the second innings or the second half of life is that to do it good, health, and the second thing is the idea of finding the right young, the finding the right set of people who are still in the first innings of their life and funding them, supporting them, letting them lead projects. I think those are the two things that stand out for myself.
Correct.
So, Subbu, you were saying about your ICC consulting project, right? Tell us more about it.
So it so happened that ICC had launched some RFP, request for a proposal, to find a consulting partner to help them write the strategy in 2011, 5 year strategic plan. So we ended up, that the note came across. Every new opportunity, there's a note that goes across office from the resourcing manager. The note went out at 8:37. That day I was in office a little early. I saw that 8:38 I replied. I think 8:39 my Australian colleague replied. 8:40 another South African colleague replied, and we all said yes, we are in. It ended up being almost a pro bono project where we did it more out of our goodwill and our love for the game. It was led by a senior partner, English partner. So together, this eclectic bunch of cricket-loving consultants went in and helped ICC navigate what they should do at that point in time. So we did a bunch of things, classic strategy, right? Talk to everybody who's involved in cricket, right? From the stakeholders to the administrators to the governing bodies to commentators to players to media and whatnot. And I had some cool experiences over there. I ended up meeting Rahul Dravid as part of the MCC, Andrew Strauss, who was the then Indian cricket, English cricket captain, and our client office was the press center of Lords. We had one entire room at our best. I was gutted when the next day we were supposed to meet the media, Michael Atherton and Michael Holding, but we had a long planned holiday to Italy. So I couldn't go there. So I very begrudgingly gave my opportunity to my another English colleague who was available. And hey, you know what happened? That day was an England Australia one day match. And apparently, this guy, Jonathan, he went down to the presentation area because his pass allowed all access. So he was. So those. But anyway, through this whole series, we kind of told them all aspects of what cricket's going on, because that was also when IPL was getting stronger. So the whole objective was, how do you maintain the primacy of Test cricket? Is that really such a thing, or do we let it die away? How do you keep one day in the balance? One day is still in the balance type of a thing with 2020 coming in, right? we predicted at that point in time this whole T20 leagues will take over, right? And people will have to choose club versus country. So a lot of things which we did over there are starting to become real. But based on that, ICC also had to define what its own role is. So we helped them with that. And as a true consultant, we also came up with a framework to define that. We called it House of Sporting Governance. So we used to have House of Operations, House of Procurement. So I still remember one fine day in the evening, me and this Australian colleague are saying, okay, this is what we need to do. Strategy at the top, a few blocks of how it runs and whatnot. And we came up with it and it really worked. We kind of built the whole strategy framed around that. We eventually went to Singapore and Dubai a few times to present it back. They were headquartered in Dubai at that point in time. So yeah, I think it was helping them define what their role is and how do they then manage the loud boards. India, England, and Australia. They still continue to be the three biggest boards who control all the power. India probably controlling more than everybody else. But at the same time, what is the role of ICC to bring in new nations coming in? Now, I think they've done a fairly good job. Now, you can argue that most of the new nations are still made out of South Asian diaspora who go and live there. But if you think about it, go and do some research. I think 2 weeks back, there was a record broken for the highest T20 score, some 300, God knows what else. It's from some country you wouldn't even remember. I don't even remember right now. It was some random country. So records are being broken like that, which make them get their moment of sunshine, right? Like I'm getting right now, thanks to the British
But how is that possible that Mix is not getting sunshine and you're getting sunshine? Are you guys both in
angle.
London?
Angle.
Just the angle, huh?
पता नहीं यार मिक्स तू म्यूट पे है
Yeah. Can you not see the reflection, the bright?
Yeah, I can.
brightness behind?
Yeah,
It's just the angle.
yeah.
maybe I'll go out a little bit if the camera isn't too shaky. See, the thing is, this is so rare, right, these days that you have to make the most out of it. That's my point. I
Yeah.
love spending time in our garden.
It's very interesting. Looks like most English people have a sunroom, which is not very common in at least in the Bay Area. But I want to build one.
Yeah, it's called the conservatory out here. So
Yeah.
and the reason
Show us,
we
show
have
us
this
your
is
garden.
we get
Show us your garden, Subbu.
So if you can see this,
Vix, the reason we have it is because otherwise it's not warm, unlike California. It's not
Yeah,
warm here.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
I
the
don't want to go too far because
so
of
the
internet. But
classroom or the conservatory it traps in the heat.
got it.
It's the
can you see?
greenhouse effect here.
So look, we chose this place because Neha's an architect. We always wanted a nice place with south facing. That's a big thing in the UK because you get the afternoon sun and makes the whole house warm. But this house, we bought it from this couple who were in their 80s and they'd lived here for nearly 40 years and they'd tended and built the place and the garden such that there's always color. Everywhere you look at, there's always some flowers which is blooming right from January, February onwards until September, October. And that's beautiful. So we have a grape wine which I've used to make some wine. I tried to make wine, it became vinegar. Miggy, there's still a vintage vinegar which I have from Casa Subbu, which we can use next time we
From
go.
Casa Subbu.
Then last year, Neha and I decided, look, we'll make this our permanent place. So we're going to expand it and build on it. So we wanted to plant some roots. So we literally got some trees to plant. So what I'm pointing over there, you may not be able to see. It's
Okay.
actually a tiny 6 foot, 5 foot tall tree, 4.5, 5 foot, 5 feet. But it's it's an 80-year-old Japanese acer maple, 80 years
Oh
old,
my
and
God.
we just wanted to plant. So we've got some. If you see that, there's some white flowers. That's a pear tree. Another pear tree.
Is
some
that a
apple trees and
slope,
so on.
Subbu?
But we
Yeah,
just
like, are
thought
you on
we'll
top of a hill or something? I see a
we
little bit
are
of
on
a
top of
slope
it.
in your background. Okay.
Exactly. So what we have, we also back out into a large open area, and back over
Okay.
there is what is called a conservation area. It's a place called Moor Park, which is
Okay.
another affluent suburb with not a lot of
Okay.
tall houses. So what we love to see is the horizon. Even though there's a lot
Subbu,
of houses,
how much does a house like that cost in London?
uh, in this part of the world, Miggy, you tell me, maybe a couple of it would start by probably 1.5 to 2 million. When we
Okay.
bought this place, it was not that much, but yeah, we need to figure. We after we do it up and expand it and all that, it'll be hopefully worth a lot more. But then again, we are going to live here, so It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
right to.
But isn't
But
it
yeah,
unaffordable for most people in London now because the salaries haven't gone up, right? So who's affording these £1.5 million homes?
it's a great point. Right now, let me digress it into something I want to talk about as well. A lot of people who live here are, and this is, I'm not saying it's a completely desi locality, but we've met and known a lot of affluent, entrepreneurial people of South Asian diaspora, people who've come from all parts of the world, people who moved from Africa, East Africa and West Africa during the troubles in the 70s, 80s, and so on. Second, third generation of Indians and Pakistanis and others, right? Bangladeshis and whatnot.
Basically,
And these,
basically direct
so,
language में what he is referring to is there are a lot of Kenyan Gujus around.
Gujus amongst others, right? But others as well. My point here is everyone has side hustles and side gigs. People who are accountants, typically they'll have a serious day job, mostly accountants, lawyers, this, that, and the other. But side hustles into breathology. I met a guy who's into breathology. He teaches people how to get the most out of breathing, how to cure allergies and whatnot. Side hustles around teaching music. Side hustles around running some trading. What do you trade? Anything. Wherever I see an opportunity, I trade. I know a couple of people, very, very good friends of mine. They're from India directly, actually, first generation. They have a scrap metal business. Buy, process, sell. So I think because of all of that, there's a lot of entrepreneurship around it. So there's a lot of new money from that point of view. So it's not just that, right? And I think this is the point which was a big eye opener for me, right? Growing up, studying, working, and so on. And because you're in central of all of that and so on, so you know how these things are. But being able to open yourselves up to follow a few passion projects, follow a few money making projects, follow a few projects and roles which are directly related to what you studied, what you learned, what you want to do. I think it's a combination is quite critical as we go forward, which is what I'm in the process of thinking when you ask me what's next. So, and you know what? This is something I noticed. Now, how old are your kids? Uh, Chow, how old is your son?
So my elder one is 19, the younger one
Nine.
is 16.
Okay, 19 and 16. So they are older than mine because younger one,
7-year-old daughter.
7 year old.
7-year-old. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I have a 14, 15-year-old daughter. Now, for me, they are in a way my opinion leader. Maybe you guys feel same, feel differently because of the way they go about harnessing all the information that's out to them, at least my daughter's generation. She's into so many different things. She's socially conscious. She now doesn't really want to shop in some of her friends do shop in these branded shops and they go in, but my daughter is like, for various reasons, she wants to go into Vinted or Depop, which are reuse, as they call it, platforms, right, where pre-loved clothes and pre-loved stuff. She's into all of that, and there's a social following in Depop where she has 400 followers. She hasn't really bought or sold anything. I tell her, Zoya, why don't you do a project? Take all the old stuff here, which you don't no longer want, sell it out, and you can keep all the money that you make out of it. So my point is, I think the way they deal with so many different things around their own life, which also makes me feel that I can do more things than one, right? It's just a question of wanting to do it and compartmentalizing yourselves enough to be able to do it, to be able to find time, to be able to, like, I've been learning the tabla for the last 4 years. Recently, I decided to do something fun out of it and do some clips with my children, just for the fun of it, right? When people ask me, when do you find the time? I said, whenever. I just need 5 minutes just to do it. Then who cares? I don't want to get into this whole thing that I need 100,000 followers. I don't care if nobody who watches it. I just want to do it and put it out there. Yeah. I have an
Okay.
Instagram, which is actually called Tabla Dad. And
Okay.
so I've just gone into that. I got my mother into, she's learning Sanskrit. So I got her into doing some simple clips around Sanskrit on a particular theme, mention the word, and then mention the English synonym, Hindi and Tamil synonym as well. And she's loving to, that aspect of it. So she goes by the handle Sanskrit Mata. Miggy, I don't think I've told you this, but you should check it out when you get a chance. वो तो तबला मेरे पास अभी भी है।
But just play something live for us, Subbu.
गाना, one of you needs to sing.
हाँ बिगलानी गाएगा चांदनी हो मेरी चांदनी.
Subbu, can you play tabla on one of your favorite songs that you were humming. Maybe one on the washing powder Nirma.
Okay, tip tip बरसा पानी कर.
हाँ चल टिप
Katrina
टिप
Kaif.
बरसा पानी करते हैं.
Finally.
Very good, Rajesh. I'm surprised. You had so much skills.
I'm
Very
surprised.
impressed. And that too, in your 40s, you spent 4 years on this passion project. Excellent.
अभी तो चल रहा है. I'm going to become a I'm going to get my doctorate on this. And the thing is, I love my son also has started picking up a little bit. So if some of my clips in the future will be him playing a little bit as well. So rather than just me trying to exercise my parenthood and making him on the background. तो ये सब करूँगा मैं थोड़ा.
Really, really interesting.
Vix to mute पे. Thank you, Chow. तुम लोग कोई बजाते हो musical instruments? What do you play?
So I used to play.
So I learned the tabla when I was 10 years old.
अच्छा तू तबला बजाता है.
किया मैंने.
कौन सा? Sorry, you said guitar, harmonium.
सितार and harmonium.
Nice. And do you still do it?
नहीं वो एक बार स्कूल के बाद छोड़ा फिर it never got picked up.
Boss, it's fun, yaar. In fact, yeah. Anyway, Vikas, you're on mute, yaar.
Right below my home, we have a big farmers market. It's the largest farmers market in Palo Alto. So every Sunday, well, right now actually, there'll be around 300 people there. And it's my dream to be a busker on that farmers market, like play some instrument and earn $100.
Nice.
So I'm still trying to understand which instrument will make me the $100. So,
anything if you go out there will do. Anything, right? At the end of the day, go out there.
Yeah, but I think music is such a good hobby, and I do want to pick it up. But no, I don't play any instrument right now.
There used to be this instrument. काफी हिंदी movies में कई बार वो होता था. It's like a long, almost like a prong, इतना बड़ा, and उसके ऊपर वो discs होती थी. उसको ऐसे छन करके बजाते. वो वाला ट्राई कर. उसके novelty value पे ही लोग ऐसे देखने जाएंगे. Yeah, maybe wear some saffron robes and all that with some Rudraksh mala. पर तो देख कैसे मिलता है. I don't know. I'm remembering that there was a movie called उसमें ये अमिताभ बच्चन and Shashi Kapoor were con men. I think it was Shant. Yeah, one of. I think they were con men and they used to become sadhus and whatever, then drug people and all that.
Yeah, sahi pakde.
Yeah. Okay. I think we are at a point of time where before we wrap up, we are going to do our rapid fire, and this is our debut rapid fire. It will just take 1 or 2 minutes, Subbu. So remember, you have only 3 seconds to answer. Otherwise, we move on. So give your most honest answer. There is no right or wrong here. And I'm going to ask you based on things that we've discussed and maybe some things we've not discussed.
Kya baat hai?
Is that fine?
I'm fine. As long as you can plead the fifth sometimes.
Perfect. You can just say pass, or you can say I don't want to answer this, even though I don't know the answer, even though I know the answer. But it's just an opinion. There's no factually correct.
Let's go.
Kearney versus Deloitte versus Genpact, the best firm to work with on a salary basis.
Depending upon level, if you unify for
एक answer चाहिए हमें. ये rapid fire है. There is no nothing. There is no logic here.
Kearney.
Best firm to work for on a culture basis.
Genpact.
London versus Singapore versus Tokyo to work.
London.
From a weather perspective.
London.
Mumbai versus Bangalore versus Chennai.
Mumbai.
Keema Karela या butter chicken?
Keema
Favorite dish?
Karela. Keema Karela. Karela Ghosh to be more
Okay.
specific, but Keema Karela also works.
Okay. Amitabh Bachchan or Rajnikant?
Seriously, guys, move on. You don't need me to answer this. It's obvious. Stupid questions mat pucho yaar. Continue.
Now, what's obvious? What's obvious? Tell us the obvious. Tell us
Sorry.
the obvious.
I mean, what, how can you even ask this question to someone who's to anybody who has a mind, who has a heart? How? Okay, it's obviously the one and only R word. R word. Okay, go on. Next.
All right. Okay. Okay. Medu vada या vada pav?
Vada pav, yaar. Come on. Vada pav. I mean, I'm a Medu vada guy, but vada pav is like my go-to. By the way, I had ragda patties the other day. Anyway, continue.
Okay. And then the last one. Work from home or going into office?
Work from home with a bit of going into office. Look, the water cooler conversations, the post-work drinks, meetings, and all that, you can't beat them. But work from home has its charm.
Okay. I'll add one bonus one. A PT Scotch or Japanese whiskey?
The PT Scotch or Japanese whiskey. Horses for courses, boss. I don't, I'm not, like I told you, I'm an anti-racist. Like that, I'm an anti-whiskeyist. While before Japan, I would have said Scotch, PT single malt. I'm completely open in terms of what to drink. I can show you my drinks cabinet and you'll, in fact, Miggy, तू आ जा ना अभी थोड़ी देर में अपन खोलते हैं एक दो bottle और पीते हैं. And we'll send
I
some
have to
photos
take
you
my
for-
son somewhere. That's why I need to leave.
अच्छा अच्छा
He's
ठीक
got
है.
a cricket nets.
क्या बात है. Okay. So there you go.
Yeah, but since I'm going to Watford, I might have 2 hours. I might actually drop in. It's a thought. I was thinking I'll go. I was all dressed up to go to the gym because that's how he's got a 2.5 hour session, and that's how I pass my time. But maybe it's near Costco, so that's not too far from your place, right?
It's a better option than gym, definitely.
Yeah. अभी तूने बोला है तो मैं सोच के बताता हूँ.
बोल आ जाओ.
I mean, since we've been discussing, but Subbu, see, it was so nice of you to share all your experiences, thoughts, and especially all the jingles that you shared with us. एक जाते जाते, can you
एक मैंने फोटो
can you
शेयर
sing
किया
one song
guest
or
पर.
jingle of your favorite, which is your favorite, before we leave?
Sorry, मनीष तू कुछ बोल रहा था क्या? चाओ.
नहीं, मैं बीच में मैं ये बोल रहा था कि तेरा तबला सुन के मैंने पुराना फोटो ढूंढ के शेयर किया है ऑफ माय स्कूल ऑर्केस्ट्रा.
क्या बात है. चलो we'll all play, right? And Vix, हम लोग भी, मैं जब भी आऊंगा हम लोग साथ में बस करते हैं. Maybe we'll make $500.
Yeah. Have you? Do you travel to California, Subbu?
I was planning it.
We are planning in June, a few of
Acha?
us. So I'll obviously say hi to you. To Palo Alto में ना.
Ha.
So coming back to
Vix, मैं भी
Miggy's
कैलिफोर्निया
questions.
आने की प्लान कर रहा था, but you've just said they don't like MBAs और मैं तो 2 बार किया हुआ है, so मतलब that is going to be a problem for me.
No, it's all good. No, it's all good.
तो Miggy तू क्या पूछ रहा था? मैं jingle to leave with.
I'm just saying before we sign off for this episode, Subbu, can I request you one song, favorite song or favorite jingle if you can hum for us?
Favorite song, और यार ये तो मतलब बहुत ही डीप चला गया. रुक जा. पूछने दे.
फेवरेट गोविंदा सॉन्ग थोड़ा नैरो कर.
Yeah, favorite masala song. We are not talking about some classic movies wala.
Dim 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 पाणी dim 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 ढगाला लागली काळ पाणी थेंब थेंब गाळा चल ग राणी गाव गाली फिरूया आपला संग. That's it, man. Dim dim dim.
Perfect. Well,
Hey, good
all right.
fun,
Thank
yaar.
you so much,
Keep
Subbu.
this
Lovely
going on.
having
I
you on
love
the
it.
show. And
And
I
just
will
want
say
to
one
add
more thing.
Mix, I just before I forget, I just want to add this is the weekend for Holi here. I don't know if you guys celebrate it in UK as much, but I just wanted to wish everyone a very happy Holi.
Happy Holi, boss.
Yes, a very happy Holi. Also, by the time we edit it, Holi will be long gone. But
Right.
a very happy Holi to everyone.
Arey, happy Holi.
Just
And
remember,
look,
we are recording this on the Holi weekend.
and for me, basically, look, it's Holi is also spring, right? And today, genuinely, there is spring weather. That's what I love. So my son is kicking his football out, so I'm going to go and kick it again a few times.
It
And
looks
I'll
like
await
amazing
our
weather.
friend. Yeah, and Manish, tu jab aayega, we'll toast. We'll capture some toasts which you can, yeah.
I